Thomas and the Monster. One night, the engines were at Tidmouth Sheds, and then, suddenly, one of them had an idea to tell a story before their bedtime. Thomas had a thought of an idea.
Maybe one of us should tell a story to pass the time,
said Thomas. Well, I think I've got a good one, said James, and so everyone listened. Once upon a time, there was an engine. He was painted blue, but probably should have been painted black. But he just liked to be blue. And he didn't mind it at all. The controller came to the engine. Blue engine, would you go out there to grab a coach that was left behind? Of course, said the engine. And then the engine left. And the engine shuffled along the track. He knew that the fog was so thick he couldn't see anything. I'll just have to wait until morning, said the engine. And he found an old shed to sleep for the night. And then he heard something coming from under the shed. The engine heard something, and then it realized some long hands reaching for him to grab. Terrified, the little engine raced out of the shed, and then he kept on racing through the fog. Soon, James had ended the story, but Percy was terrified.
Then what happened?
Percy said, and then no one saw the little blue engine again, said James.
About the monster?
Percy whimpered. Gordon had giggled. Oh, Percy, stop, don't worry. It's just a story. Stories are not real, they're just pretend.
What if the story is true? On the way to the sheds. What if the engineering monster is out there somewhere right now?
Oh, stop being such a scaredy cat, Percy. There are no such things as monsters.
Later, the engines were sound asleep. But Percy heard something. Percy was so terrified.
Gordon, Thomas, help! There's a monster in my shed!
But the engines knew it was only James. He had been hiding some scrap metal to frighten Percy. I'm a monster, James said. Percy was embarrassed for making such a fuss. Don't worry, Percy. It's all right. Just don't panic. Monsters aren't real. Soon, later that night, Thomas heard something.
Stop it, James,
said Thomas, but James was already sound asleep.
If that isn't James, then maybe I really do have a monster under my shed,
said Thomas, so he stayed awake all night to be safe. The next day, Percy was at the station when Thomas came up to him. He looked very tired after staying awake last night. He yawned.
Did you hear any other strange noises in your shed last night, Percy?
Not after James's silly prank, Percy.
Soon, as Percy left, Henry came up. Henry could see that Thomas was so tired. Hello there, Thomas. You look like if you could use some special coal.
No, Henry. I'm just a little tired is all.
Said Thomas. He just didn't want anyone to know that he had been too frightened to sleep. Before he knew it, Thomas realized that it was getting dark. Soon, he decided to head straight to bed. Later that night, the noises were back, and they were coming from Thomas's shed.
Who's there?
Thomas whispered.
Go away, monster! Get out of my shed!
Thomas ordered as he closed his eyes tight. The noise was getting louder and closer.
That will surely wake the other engines. They'll save me from the monster.
But the other engines didn't stir.
It's just outside the door. There's its head. Help, Gordon.
But only the monster heard Thomas. Then
Oh no, it's trying to get in.
thought Thomas. Then suddenly the banging stopped. Thomas was too frightened to move. He peered out into the dark. And there it was, the horrible engine-eating monster. Thomas clamped his own eyes shut and screamed.
Gordon! Henry! Percy! James! Help! Save me from the monster!
Thomas, open your eyes!
What are you laughing at, Gordon? There's a monster right outside my shed.
Not anymore. Now the monster is in your shed. Very slowly, Thomas opened one eye to peek at it.
A hedgehog? All this time, I was afraid of a tiny little hedgehog.
All the engines all laughed, and Thomas laughed with them. I bet you have a good animation, Thomas, said Percy. But I think you're right, Percy. Don't you agree, Thomas?
I think you're right. It's the only thing in the world that could turn a tiny hedgehog into a big scary monster.